High above the lowland haze, where clouds drift like ancient spirits, lie villages untouched by time. Perched on cliff edges and nestled in the folds of misty peaks, these are the homes of the Sky People, communities who live where the air thins and the world falls away below. Their lives, suspended between earth and sky, follow rhythms shaped by wind, stone, and stars. Here, isolation becomes beauty, and silence speaks of resilience. This is not just a journey through altitude, it's a step into forgotten worlds where culture clings to the clouds and human spirit soars with the mountains. Larinada. At the edge of the Peruvian Andes, Larinada clings to the mountainside like a defiant echo of human resilience. Rising above glaciers and cloud lines, it is the highest permanent settlement on Earth. Life here unfolds at over 5,000 meters, where oxygen thins, temperatures fall, and the sky seems close enough to touch. The mountain doesn't welcome strangers, it tests them. But for those who endure, it holds something that has drawn people for centuries: gold. The city grew not from roads or rivers, but from the promise of wealth buried deep in rock. For decades, miners have arrived in waves, chasing dreams inside tunnels, carved beneath the ice. The system known as cauchoreo allows them to work unpaid for weeks, gambling that the final day's yield might bring fortune. There are no guarantees, only hope wrapped in frost. Larinada is not built with symmetry or plan. Shacks and narrow paths sprawl across the slope, clinging to the icebound terrain. There is little infrastructure, no running water, scarce electricity, and limited healthcare. Yet in this harsh environment, a population of more than 40,000 endures. Families raise children under tin roofs, markets appear in morning fog, and Andean traditions are kept alive in the shadow of machinery and snow. Above the city looms the glacier of Mount Anania, both lifeline and threat. Its melting waters feed the region, but its retreat is a warning. The mercury used in artisanal mining seeps into the soil, poisoning streams and lungs alike. But for many, there is no alternative. The mountain gives and takes with equal force. Larinada is a city forged by extremes, a place where survival becomes legacy, and where each breath carries the weight of altitude, ambition, and ancestral grit. It stands not in defiance of nature, but woven into its most unforgiving heights, a testament to how far the human spirit will climb. Chungthang Monastery. Carved into the granite cliffs of the Tarrap Valley, Chungthang Monastery clings to the mountainside like a sacred vision. Shrouded in clouds and pine-scented mist, it rests at the edge of the sky, anchored above a vertical drop that vanishes into forested silence. Known as the Tiger's Nest, this ancient sanctuary is one of Bhutan's most revered spiritual sites, a place where faith meets altitude and time feels suspended. The monastery traces its origins to the 8th century, when Guru Padmasambhava, the bringer of Buddhism to Bhutan, is said to have meditated here after flying to the site on the back of a tigress. In the centuries since, monks and pilgrims have made their way up the steep path through pine groves and fluttering prayer flags, drawn by devotion and the stillness that waits beyond. Chungthang is a masterpiece of Himalayan architecture. Whitewashed walls rise directly from the stone, their wooden balconies and golden roofs jutting into the clouds. Inside, a series of temples and shrines echo with centuries of chanting, their walls covered in murals of deities, protectors, and sacred tales. Butter lamps flicker in the dim light, casting shadows across ancient floors, worn smooth by countless footsteps. Access to the monastery is earned step by step. The trail winds through silent woods and along rocky outcrops, opening onto views that stretch across valleys and distant peaks. Pilgrims pause along the way to breathe in incense and mountain air, their journey both physical and spiritual. Though damaged by fire and restored over the years, Taktsang remains untouched in spirit. It is not only a symbol of Bhutan's Buddhist heritage, but a living sanctuary, still inhabited by monks who rise before dawn to chant in harmony with the wind. Chungthang Lahan. In the far reaches of North Sikkim, where the Himalayas rise in vast glacial silence, lie the sacred highland settlements of Chungthang and Lahan. Wrapped in snow-fed rivers and windswept ridges, these are places where faith, legend and landscape are woven into a single breath. Crisp with altitude, heavy with memory, Chungthang sits at the confluence of two mountain rivers, nestled in a fertile valley where dense forests open to icy peaks. According to local belief, this is where Guru Padmasambhava blessed the land in the 8th century, leaving imprints on stone and spirit alike. Even today, the presence of sacred rocks, blooming fields, and water said to carry healing power gives Chungthang a quiet reverence, as if the valley itself is an altar. Northward, the road climbs toward Lakan, a village of wooden homes and fluttering prayer flags that stands as a gateway to some of the highest landscapes in Sikkim. Here, the Lakampa, an indigenous Buddhist community, preserve an ancient way of life shaped by ritual, solitude, and seasonal movement. In winter, the village huddles in silence under snow. In spring, its people journey toward the sacred lakes and pastures of the high Himalayas. Above Lakan lies the path to Gurudongma Lake, one of the highest and holiest in the world. But even below that sacred point, the journey is lined with chortens, monasteries, and the long echo of mantras carried by the wind. This is not a landscape of conquest, but of devotion. Though remote and often overlooked, Chungthang and Lahan remain deeply tied to Sikkim's identity. Places where Tibetan Buddhist traditions still guide daily life, and where nature commands both respect and awe. The mountains here do not just rise, they speak, and those who live among them listen. These highland villages are not shaped by speed or scale, but by stillness, story, and sacred rhythm. They are not relics of the past, but living altars above the clouds, carved by time, held together by belief, and rooted in the sky. Jangji Village. In the heart of Hunan province, where stone pillars rise like ancient sentinels through drifting mist, lies Jangji, a place where earth seems to defy gravity. Scattered among the towering sandstone peaks are quiet mountain villages, suspended between heaven and forest, hidden within a world sculpted by wind and time. Jangji's surreal landscape, now a UNESCO Global Geopark, is the result of millions of years of geological transformation. Quartz sandstone columns pierce the sky, some over 200 meters tall, shaped by erosion, frost, and rain. These natural towers gave inspiration to the floating mountains of the film Avatar. Yet their true wonder lies not in fantasy, but in the lives built among them. For generations, Tujia and Miao communities have called these vertical lands home. Villages are carved into ridges and plateaus, surrounded by hanging cliffs and hidden trails. Here, the architecture blends with the terrain. Stilted wooden houses perch on ledges, their roofs wrapped in fog, their foundations rooted in stone. Daily life in these heights flows with the seasons. Fields of rice and maize cling to steep terraces. Paths wind through bamboo groves, leading from one isolated hamlet to another. Morning chants echo from distant temples, while the silence of dusk wraps the valley in gold. The people here live in close rhythm with the land, guided by ancestral traditions mountain deities, and respect for the balance between human and nature. Jangji is more than a marvel of stone. It is a soaring canvas of life above the clouds, a place where villagers live among the peaks, and where the landscape speaks with quiet grandeur. In these heights, permanence is not built in steel or concrete, but in the bond between land, lineage, and sky. Mansang. Hidden beyond the Himalayan rain shadow, surrounded by red cliffs and wind-sculpted canyons, stands Mansang, the walled capital of the ancient kingdom of Mansang. Perched high on the Tibetan plateau, this remote settlement is one of the last surviving strongholds of traditional Tibetan culture, preserved in the silence of altitude and stone. Founded in the 15th century by King Ami Pal, Mansang was once a thriving centre of trade, linking the mountains of Nepal with the plains of Tibet. Its walls, built to guard both people and power, still enclose a maze of whitewashed homes, narrow alleys, and towering monasteries that echo with chants carried by the wind. Beyond the gates, only barren ridges and vast skies stretch into the distance, a fortress in the clouds and untouched by time. The people of Mansang live in quiet continuity with their past. The Lobus, descendants of Tibetan settlers, keep alive a heritage of sky burials, masked dances, and seasonal pilgrimages. Life here is slow, deliberate, and deeply spiritual. Monks in crimson robes move between centuries-old gompas, while villagers tend to barley fields and yak herds under the gaze of crumbling cliffs. Long isolated from the modern world, Mansang was once accessible only by foot or mule. Today, roads have reached its doorstep, but the village remains a relic of another era, shielded not just by geography, but by the will of its people to remember who they are. Mansang is not a ruin. It is a living kingdom in the sky, a sanctuary of memory and resilience where tradition is not displayed but lived. Among the high deserts of Mansang, it endures as a rare and sacred echo of a world that once ruled the roof of the world. Upper Pisang. Tucked into a wind-swept ridge above the Jangji Valley, Upper Pisang gazes out across the towering giants of the Annapurna Range. With its stone houses, fluttering prayer flags, and golden-roofed monastery, this Himalayan village stands quietly above the clouds, a resting place between sky and earth on one of the world's most storied trails. Upper Pisang lies along the ancient trade route that winds through the Annapurna circuit, a path once travelled by traders and pilgrims, now walked by those seeking silence in the mountains. Unlike its lower counterpart in the valley, this village holds tighter to tradition. Here, the air is colder, the views more commanding, and the pace of life unchanged for generations. The people of Upper Pisang belong to the Gurung and Menangi communities, mountain dwellers whose lives follow the rhythm of the land. Fields of barley and buckwheat cling to terraced slopes, while herds of yak and sheep graze the open hills. The village architecture is austere yet resilient. Thick stone walls, flat roofs, and wooden beams blackened by generations of hearth smoke. At the village's edge, a Buddhist monastery overlooks the valley, its colours vivid against the barren rock. Inside, butter lamps flicker before statues of the Buddha, while monks chant in the glow of morning light. The sound drifts over the rooftops and into the thin air, blending with the wind and the distant rumble of glaciers. Upper Pisang is not just a waypoint on a mountain path. It is a living village rooted in altitude and ritual, a place where the Himalayas are not a backdrop but a presence. In its silence, its simplicity, and its staggering beauty, it holds a truth that can only be found where the world narrows into sky. Machuka Village. High in the Chilean Andes, where the desert meets the sky and volcanoes rise above salt plains, sits Machuka, a tiny village of adobe walls and thatched roofs, cradled by silence. Surrounded by golden grasslands, grazing llamas, and wide, endless sky. It stands as a quiet sentinel in the vastness of the Atacama Plateau. Machuka was once a resting place for Andean herders, making their way along ancient trade routes between Bolivia and the Pacific. Today, fewer than a dozen families remain, living at over 4,000 meters, where each breath is thin and the nights fall cold and clear. The village is shaped not by time, but by the elements: sun, wind, and solitude. The architecture reflects centuries of adaptation. Homes are built with sun-dried earth, low to the ground, their roofs woven from puna grass. At the village centre, a small white church stands beneath a straw bell tower, its walls weathered by generations of prayer and wind. It is a place where faith is humble and deeply rooted, shaped by both Catholic tradition and ancestral Andean beliefs. Water comes from mountain springs, and firewood is scarce in this treeless land. Yet life continues. Locals raise llamas and alpacas, collect medicinal herbs from the desert, and honor the cycles of sun and soil. Every gesture is deliberate, every custom handed down like a song that belongs to the wind. Machuka is not forgotten. It is held in place by memory and mountains, a thread in the larger fabric of Andean survival. Above the salt flats and below the smoking peaks, this village endures, fragile, fierce, and timeless, where the desert sky begins and the earth remembers. Fugtal Monastery. Clinging to the mouth of a vast limestone cave, Fugtal Monastery spills like a vision from the cliffs of remote Zanskar. Hidden deep in the folds of Ladak's high desert mountains. Built into a sheer rock face above the turquoise waters of the Lungnak River, it is one of the most isolated monasteries in the Indian Himalayas, reachable only by foot across narrow trails etched into the canyon walls. Founded in the early 12th century by the followers of the great sage Gangsem Sherap Sampo, Fugtal has remained a sanctuary of learning and meditation ever since. The monastery's name means Cave of Liberation, and the site has long drawn monks and seekers who come in search of solitude, silence, and inner clarity. Its chambers, built from stone and mud, seem to grow organically from the mountain, blending human devotion with the raw austerity of nature. Within its walls, a monastic community of Gelugpa monks lives according to centuries-old discipline. The rhythm of life is guided by the sound of conch shells and prayer bells, by the turning of scriptures and the rising of the sun. Ancient texts line the wooden shelves of the monastery's library, while classrooms echo with the teachings of Buddhist philosophy, memorized and recited against the roar of wind outside. Fugtal is not simply a place of worship. It is a monument to endurance, of spirit, of tradition, of community carved into stone. In its isolation, it preserves a way of life that has all but vanished elsewhere. Balanced between earth and emptiness, this cave monastery remains a living symbol of how belief can anchor itself to the most fragile edge of the world and still hold. Cham. Deep within the folds of the Annapurna region, where pine forests climb into icy ridges and rivers carve through stone, lies the village of Cham. Set along the banks of the Marsiangdi River, this Himalayan outpost serves as the district headquarters of Mansang, a quiet convergence of tradition, altitude, and rugged beauty. Cham is more than a stopping point on the famed Annapurna circuit. At over 2,500 meters, it marks a threshold between the lush lower hills and the stark, windswept highlands beyond. Here, the landscape begins to shift. Terraces give way to cliffs, the air grows thinner, and prayer flags stretch like threads across the sky. Cham's people are mostly Gurung and Tibetan-descended communities who have lived in this region for generations. Life here flows with the seasons. Barley and potatoes grow in summer fields, while winter brings snow and silence. Horses and mules still carry goods through ancient trade paths, and the rhythm of village life remains slow, measured, and rooted in the earth. At its heart, a hot spring bubbles near the river, long known for its healing warmth. Nearby, monasteries echo with chants and the scent of incense, reminding all who pass through that this is a place not just of journey, but of presence. Pilgrims, porters, and travellers pause here, not only to rest, but to listen. Cham is a village shaped by the meeting of worlds, the old and the new, the forest and the highland, the traveller and the mountain soul. In its quiet strength and unhurried grace, it offers a glimpse into the still beating heart of Himalayan life, held steady where the clouds begin to gather and the climb truly begins. Tarrap Valley villages. Far beyond the beaten paths of Nepal, deep within the shadows of the Dhaulagiri range, lies the Tarrap Valley, a hidden sanctuary of highland villages where life continues much as it did centuries ago. Set at elevations above 4,000 meters, these settlements are among the highest inhabited places on Earth, cradled by barren cliffs, alpine meadows, and a silence that stretches from earth to sky. The valley is part of Dolpo, a remote region long isolated by geography and winter snow. Here, villages like Doan, Tokyu, and Shipchok lie scattered along the banks of the Tarrap Kola, their stone homes anchored into wind-blasted slopes. These are not transient camps, but permanent communities, among the last in the world, where a fully preserved form of Tibetan culture thrives in seclusion. The people of Tarrap are known as Dolpopa. They follow the ancient Bon and Tibetan Buddhist traditions, blending shamanic rituals with monastic discipline. Monasteries like Ribo Bumpa and Shipchok Gompa rise from the rocks, their prayer flags fluttering against skies of startling blue. Many walls and chortins line the narrow trails, and every pass is blessed with silence and sky. Agriculture here is survival. Fields of barley and buckwheat are carved into narrow terraces, protected by stone walls from mountain winds. Yaks and duzos graze the slopes, and every household stores fuel and food for the long winter when snow cuts the valley off for months. The Dolpopa are self-reliant, resourceful, and deeply spiritual. Their lives shaped by ritual, tradition, and the rhythms of the land. Few outsiders reach Tarrap. The journey requires days of walking over high passes, through canyons and windswept plateaus. But those who do find not only dramatic beauty, but an enduring way of life. Amdo villages. Across the vast, windswept highlands of the Tibetan Plateau, the region of Amdo stretches in every direction, a land of open skies, rolling grasslands, and villages rooted in tradition. This is one of Tibet's three great cultural regions, where nomadic heritage and monastic life converge beneath snow-capped horizons and prayer-stitched winds. Amdo is scattered with remote villages built from earth, stone, and memory. Clustered along river valleys or spread across grassland basins, these settlements endure at altitudes where few crops grow and where winters descend with unforgiving silence. Homes are low and sturdy, often decorated with painted window frames and carved wooden lintels, reflecting the care and identity of the families within. Life in Amdo has long followed a pastoral rhythm. Nomadic communities tend herds of yaks and sheep, moving between seasonal pastures that stretch to the sky. Yungas Ridge Towns. Where the Andes plunge into the jungles of northern Bolivia, the Yungas region clings to the slopes like a bridge between two worlds. Along narrow ridge lines and winding cliff roads, towns and villages rise above the clouds, suspended between mountain and rainforest, shaped by history, climate, and survival. The Yungas is a place of striking contrast. Steep valleys plunge into mist, while ridges catch the sun. From the high plains of La Paz, ancient Inca trails descend into this subtropical corridor, where coca fields, citrus groves, and coffee plantations dot the mountainsides. Roads curve like threads over cliffs, and every bend reveals a town seemingly woven into the earth. Towns like Coroico, Chulumani, and Irupana have long served as crossroads between the Andean Altiplano and the Amazon basin. Spanish colonial influence lingers in their plazas and churches, yet the soul of these places belongs to the Aymara and Afro-Bolivian communities who have lived here for generations. Traditions run deep, from earth-honoring rituals to vibrant festivals, echoing with drums and mountain flutes. Terraced fields spill down from the hills, cultivated by hand and nourished by mountain mist. Narrow footpaths connect settlements across ridges, where donkeys still carry bundles through the forested slopes. Life here is steep, everything rises or falls, and the thin paths between villages tell stories of trade, hardship, and resilience. Above all, these ridge towns are defined by their altitude. Clouds drift below rooftops, sunrises emerge from blankets of fog, storms roll across the valley floor, while the towns remain still, perched in quiet witness. The infamous Death Road, once the only lifeline between La Paz and the Yungas, twists past waterfalls and sheer drops, a reminder of the peril that defines this terrain. Yet despite the isolation and danger, the Yungas ridge towns endure. They are places where life grows from the cliffside, where culture is carved into slope and soil, and where the past breathes easily in the high jungle air. In the folds of Bolivia's steep green heart, the sky people of the Yungas live on, between rain and rock, cloud and canopy. Ganduk. On the southern flanks of the Annapurna Range, where the mountains rise like sentinels into the sky, lies Ganduk, a Gurung village etched into the hillside, where every home opens to a panorama of peaks. Wrapped in clouds and rhododendron forests, it stands as a gateway between the lowland world and the sacred heights above. Ganduk is one of Nepal's most iconic highland settlements. Built from stone and slate, its houses tightly stacked along stepped paths. Generations of Gurung families have lived here, following rhythms of terrace farming, seasonal herding, and deep-rooted tradition. In this highland cradle, the air carries the scent of wood smoke and mountain rain, and time moves at the pace of footsteps. The village has long served as a junction, not just of trails, but of culture. Gurung customs blend Buddhist and animist beliefs, passed down through ritual, song, and memory. Women in traditional dress spin wool beneath wooden eaves. Elders gather in communal courtyards to share stories of mountain spirits and ancestral journeys. Above them all, Machuka rises, a sacred, untouched peak, revered as the seat of the gods. Stone staircases wind through fields of millet and corn, leading to temples, lodges, and simple homes whose doors open wide to the clouds. Though trekkers pass through on their way to Annapurna Base Camp, the soul of the village remains unchanged, grounded in earth, framed by sky. Ganduk is more than a scenic resting place. It is a living testament to the Gurung people's quiet strength and cultural pride. In a world of movement, it holds its place, steady, rooted, and high in the arms of the Himalayas.